Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. 2 steps forward, 1 step back in the Israel-Hamas war. Will they agree to a ceasefire? Foreign policy expert Dan Senor joins us.
Is this a good deal?
No, it's not. It doesn't mean Israel shouldn't do it.
But why?
The reason I am supportive of this deal is because Israel militarily and geopolitically is in the best position it has been. Honestly, you go all the way back to the Six-Day War in 1967.
How we got here, why it's taking so long to find a resolution, and what new leadership stateside might do.
Biden, and I've given him credit from time to time for what he's done for Israel post-October 7th, but I think he stymied many of the negotiations because of the pressure he would publicly put on Israel.
Plus, a well-known short seller shutting down.
The emotional toll
Stress.
and stress that being a short seller has.
Always in a fight or preparing for a fight.
And a warning from President Biden about technology's power and big tech's billionaire presence at the inauguration.
The oligarchs.
It's Thursday, January 16th, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
President Biden delivering his farewell address from the Oval Office last night. He highlighted some of his administration's achievements and delivered a series of warnings, interestingly, for the future of the country, including what he talked about: unchecked power of the presidency, widespread misinformation, disinformation, and then this.
Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead.
President Biden wishing the incoming Trump administration success and thanked the American people.
Now to Monday's inauguration of Donald J. Trump. A Bloomberg report says that Apple's Tim Cook will attend, and Reuters says that Alphabet's Sundar Pichai will be there as well. They'll join other big tech executives, including Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg.
The oligarchs.
He referred to the tech industrial,
Right.
the tech industrial complex, which is...
They'll be there.
Yeah.
It's like the MAGA 12 now, I think.
It is growing on a daily basis. The markets are closed on Monday, but CNBC will have special coverage of the inauguration. We'll be featuring some high-profile guests to talk about the new administration and your money. Those include legendary investor Stan Druckenmiller, Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla, Elon Musk biographer Walter Isaacson, and Carlyle's David Rubenstein. Separately, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella reportedly dined with Trump and Vice President-elect Vance at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Those reports say that they discussed AI and cybersecurity, including Microsoft's pledge to invest $80 billion on AI data centers worldwide. No word on whether Nadella will attend the inauguration, but Microsoft was one of the companies that contributed $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund.
My understanding is he's not attending.
Satya?
Satya, just because there's a whole bunch of people who are headed to Davos, and then there's a whole bunch of people who are headed to the inauguration, and there's some people who are going to the inauguration and to Davos.
And to Davos, right.
But he's on the straight to Davos list. Hindenburg Research, the investment firm that gained a lot of notoriety with several big successful short bets, is shutting down. Founder Nate Anderson citing what he calls the intense and at times all-encompassing nature of the work. Some of Hindenburg's high-profile reports, you may remember, involved Icon Enterprises, Nikola, and India's Adani Group, which made global headlines. Its most recent report at the start of this year focused on Carvana. They had also focused on Roblox. But if you read the story, it's a fascinating piece in the Journal, just about the emotional toll
Stress
that being a short seller, it has. Most things...
always in a fight or preparing.
You're always
for a
fighting.
fight.
And the truth is, most things do go up, hopefully, over time.
Right.
And so you're playing against you're playing against the odds almost across the board. And you could sort of feel the emotional toll that Nate was discussing in that piece.
And you can lose, your losses are potentially infinite.
They're potentially infinite.
It's short.
And
Right.
look, even the best of them, you go back and think about like Jim Chanos has been on our broadcast
always
forever.
came on, and he'd never say, "Yeah, I'm doing well. I'm just doing less badly than," because the market's always going up. So the best you can do is, like, on a relative basis, you can perform a little better, but markets are usually going up.
It's hard, and so you have to be constantly spotting.
You can hit
and
some big stuff.
You can hit
Baldwin,
an Enron. You could hit David Einhorn
Chanos.
hitting a
Chanos
Lehman
was
Brothers.
Enron, Baldwin United
Right.
from the 80s.
There's always been people who hate the short sellers because they think they're
Well, that's the other thing.
take out
It's
legitimate
un-American,
companies.
right? Is that what the
They serve a purpose when they are
Critic would
rooting
be.
out fraud,
Right.
like an Enron situation.
And there just is that psychologically, I still see it that way. Like, someone can come on and say, "Wow, this company does this, this, this. I really am bullish long term,"
Right.
and everybody just goes, "Oh, that's nice. He's on CNBC." You come on and go, "Look, this thing is ready.
right.
Yeah, is ready to to implode." And it's like, "Hey, he's talking down the stock. Shareholders are gonna." It's weird. We never get beyond sort of that mentality against short sellers, which can be. They can
But
be really.
it's a increasingly shrinking group of people. I mean, you think we had that interview last week with Andrew Left.
Yeah.
He was one of the sort of last men standing, if you will. I don't know. I mean, he's got the SEC and the government after him now, and then you have only a I'm thinking Muddy Waters. There's only a handful of folks out
Hindenburg
there
was pretty active.
that are really in this
and
business
then
today.
think if you have a huge position and you get a Reddit board.
Well,
There's no one has argued yet that any of those stocks were actually valued at GameStop at $400 a share was never there, but you still got your ass handed to you if you were short,
Or
and
if
you were
short
part of your
Tesla
problem.
shares.
Right.
And you were part of the problem because as you're covering it, I don't know, that's a naked shorting
Situation.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up next on Squawk Pod, a setback in the Middle East. Dan Senor, Bush-era foreign policy advisor, says Israel's ceasefire deal with Hamas might not be a good one, but they should do it anyway. And maybe there's a positive change ahead for the Israelis.
I just spoke to a number of people in the Middle East. Everyone felt on edge about Trump coming in. He's like the night at the bar, like he's just showing up, he's doing something crazy, and we don't know what that is, and we don't want to test it.
This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, along with Joe Kernen and Becky. Quick, among today's top stories, a setback in the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office saying his cabinet will not convene to approve the agreement due to what has been now described as a last-minute crisis caused by Hamas. A spokesperson for Hamas saying they are committed to the ceasefire agreement announced by mediators. And joining us right now on the set is Dan Senor. He's the former foreign policy advisor for the Bush administration, host of the podcast Call Me Back, friend of the show, and someone who's been on the broadcast on some of these very pivotal moments. So where are we really?
I think the deal is going to go through. I think,
Despite
yes,
whatever is being said right now.
Yes. So I think the deal will go through, and I think as soon as Sunday we will start seeing Israeli hostages returning to Israel. The first would be three Israeli women. There are last-minute hiccups in the deal, as is often the case with these kinds of negotiations. It certainly was the case in November of 23 when there was that big deal done. There were last-minute hiccups. The disputes seem to be the first phase of the deal is a 42-day ceasefire. And during that 42-day ceasefire, 33 Israeli hostages over the course of the 42 days are to be released. And then Israel can commence negotiations for the second phase, or the war could resume. One of the factions in Netanyahu's government is arguing there is no phase two. At the end of phase one, we go back to war. And obviously Israel has the option to do that, but it sounds like this one, his name is Smotrich, he's the finance minister, he's saying, no, we want to know that you're going to do that. That's the first thing. And the second holdup is Israel is going to be releasing hundreds, about 1,200 Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons as part of this deal. It's sort of a crazy part of the scenario that for every Israeli hostage, you've got tens of Palestinian prisoners that are being released. And Israel, according to the deal, has some kind, so Hamas presents a list of the prisoners they want out, and Israel has some kind of veto over they get to pull a name out and replace it with another one because some names are so unacceptable. Keep in mind, in a previous hostage deal in 2011, Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October 7th, was one of the people released. So if Israel knows it has a Sinwar type that Hamas is asking to be released, they get to say no. And Hamas is saying, no, we don't. You can't exercise your veto. So this is also a holdup. I think it'll get sorted.
Is this a good deal?
No, it's not. It doesn't mean Israel shouldn't do it, but it's not a good deal. I mean, when you think about the fact that here we are, we just passed the second Thanksgiving. I mean, you think about that, of these Israeli prisoners sitting there in the dungeons of Gaza. And after all that and all the military success Israel has achieved, the idea that it still has to negotiate to get some women out, some children out, some dead bodies out, in return for tens of Palestinian prisoners. It's just, from afar, you sit there thinking, isn't this just going to encourage terrorism in the future? Isn't this going to just send the message that, look at the high price Israel will pay to get their people back? You know, Israel's enemies will say, we could just keep doing this more and more and more. That said, I'm supportive of the deal. And the reason I am, Andrew, is because Israel right now, and I've been skeptical of a lot of negotiations in the past, and I didn't think they were going to go anywhere. And I understood why there was some resistance within Israel. The reason I am supportive of this deal is because Israel militarily and geopolitically is in the best position it has been. Honestly, you go all the way back to the Six-Day War in 1967. If you look at what Israel has done to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Iran, the regime in Syria has fallen. Israel's now on offense against the Houthis. I mean, Israel is on the march in the region. So Israel's going to have to take some risk in doing this deal and taking the pressure off Hamas. If you're ever going to take a risk, do it now to get some of your people out, when Israel has been operating from this position of strength.
Could Israel actually be the ones to say no to this deal, though? I mean, I was hearing that there were two factions within Netanyahu's government that are threatening to pull out of the government if he goes ahead with this.
So one of the factions, led by Ben Gvir, he's against it, and he is threatening to pull out of the government. But Netanyahu's coalition in recent months has expanded. So it's 120 seats in the parliament, in the Knesset. He had a 64-seat government. So if one of those parties pulled out, it would always sink the government. But since then, his government has expanded. He brought another party in, so he has 68 seats. So that gives him a little leverage. One party pulls out, his government survives. Both of those factions, both of those parties pull out, the government falls.
Final question. The politics of here, meaning we have a new president coming on board literally next week.
Yeah.
How much credit, blame, whatever, are you going to give to Biden? How much credit, blame are you going to give to Trump? And given that you think this is a bad deal, but maybe something that's worthy, how should we think about it?
Two things. I just want to say very quickly, don't underestimate, hundreds and hundreds of Israelis have been killed in this war, IDF casualties, since October 7th. Israel keeps it's fighting a seven-front war. It has to keep sending its young men and women to fight these fronts that they're on. And letting families know that, yes, it's universal conscription. Yes, your loved ones are on the front lines, but we will do everything possible to get them back if they're taken hostage is a very important message to Israelis. Look, I think Biden, and I've given him credit from time to time for what he's done for Israel post-October 7th, but I think he stymied many of the negotiations because of the pressure he would publicly put on Israel, which sent a message to Hamas leadership that, the pressure's mounting on Israel. Why do we need to negotiate? Right. And I think Trump coming in and sending a message, A, that he was unapologetically sympathetic to Israel, and B, more importantly, quote unquote, all hell will break loose. Now, he never specified what all hell will break, but it just, the sense that someone was coming in that was going to shake things up, and you do not want to catch his wrath.
Yes, Israel's back.
Yeah, but and he truly loathes Israel's enemies, and he was ready to do so. And the fact that he left it vague, I think, I just spoke to a number of people in the Middle East. Everyone felt on edge about Trump coming in, like, it's sort of like his one Israeli friend. His friend said to me, he's like the night at the bar, like he's just showing up, he's doing something crazy, and we don't know what that is, and we don't want to test it. I've heard this from hostage families. Hostage
Don't you
families who
think
work
there's-
closely with the
there's
Biden
less
team.
light between Israel and the
But it's
United
also
States?
yes, and also the willingness, the unpredictability. That's the point.
Well,
is
I
that
know.
the unpredictability
That's
that
the
we don't know
old-
what he'll do, and the fact that he set this deadline, all hell breaks loose by January 20th, put everyone on edge. And I've heard this from Biden, some of the Biden folks too. They said there was like a whole good cop, bad cop thing going on.
Less
where
likely
Biden,
to pull the rug out from under Israel, which you never knew when that was going to happen.
Right, and the distance when the U.S. would do that encouraged Hamas to not negotiate
Right,
and to just
exactly.
dig in. So, look, you've heard it from Biden himself. You heard it from the Biden people. Trump playing this kind of bad cop role was extremely important. And I will say, we talk about how dysfunctional and polarized our politics are. These last few months, and I've seen it pretty closely. These two teams,
Right.
who would have thought the Biden team and the Trump teams working together like this is impressive.
Dan Senor, thank you.
And that is the pod for today. Thank you, as always, for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern and get the best of our show every day right in your ears when you follow Squawk Pod wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.